Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Podcast brought to you by Global Sports Podcast Network. I am your host today, Dan Tanner, and I am joined today by Wale Bakari. How are you doing, big man? Oh, before we start, a slightly belated happy birthday as well from the other day. Hope it was a good one.
Yes, it was boring. I was just working. I was that, and even at some point I forgot it was my birthday. But thanks, Paul.
It's only through the WhatsApp group. So, but that's a bit of a shame. It wasn't a good one. But either way,
I don't even know how Joe found out. But big shout out to him.
Well, we're going to have a word with him when he comes back because he's been hacking something. So let's hope that Palace can get you a birthday present, sort of a good win against West Ham, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. So in a little while, we're going to go through some team news for both sides, how we think the game is going to go. We're also going to talk about the new West Ham Gaffer because they have a new one, which just happens to be an ex-Brighton manager. So, of course, he has to have his managerial debut for West Ham against Palace. So, we'll have a little bit of a chin wag on that. And then finally, as it is a preview show, we will go and give our sort of score predictions and maybe a couple of key players that might have an impact on the game on the weekend. So, to start off with the team news for Palace, the Palace injury list hasn't really changed that much. Most of the regular guys that have been out for a while, like Wharton and so on, they're not going to be coming back anytime soon. Lerma will not be available due to sickness after he came off I think it was the previous match after about 20 minutes or so he'll be unavailable due to illness. Also on the illness list, Mateta, Eze, Hughes and Mitchell. There seems to be something spreading in that training ground that I don't know why so many are coming down with these bad sort of illnesses and stuff. But those guys should be available. But one of the more irritating ones, especially for me, is that Chalobah will no longer be selectable as he has been recalled by Chelsea. Wale, what is your kind of reaction to Chelsea cancelling the loan deal and taking back Chalobah at this point in the season?
Well, unfortunately, this 9 times out of 10, this is a point that you get to do it. It was their prerogative. It was a decision only they could make, and they chose to make it. A couple of weeks, I think last week when it came up, I was quite confident that it wasn't going to happen. But anyway, they've decided to do it. It's definitely not good for Palace, not good for the player, except it's going to get playing time when he returns. Chelsea, of course, struggling with a bout of injuries with their defenders at the moment, so maybe we'll get some playing time. But it's settled in pretty well into the Palace team after a very shaky start. Of course, it wasn't entirely fit or match fit when he joined at the start of the season, but he's done great at the back. Got some decisive goals for Palace. 3 goals he scored already this season, so it's definitely going to be a huge loss. But just as Glasner said, thankfully it's happening at the time Chado Riyad is coming back into the squad. But remember that Riyad was available when Palace went for Chalobah, so it was going to be the two of them that the team wanted. But now Riyad is back. Hopefully he regains fitness as quickly as possible. But of the showing of what we saw against Leicester, Gay, Lacroix and Richards, not a bad combination. We've seen Nathaniel Klein, feeling in that back three. Riyad's availability is a good one as well. We've seen Jefferson Lerma also feeling that back three. So Palace will be fine, although Chalobah will definitely be missed considering his contributions in the first half of the season.
Oh, definitely, because he's scored at least a good few goals for us, because we've got some great sort of goal-scoring defenders. Mine's more the fact of it's really cheeky from Chelsea just to sort of recall him in the middle of the season when they kind of have an abundance of players and we're in the middle of a transfer window. So I think they're going on the logic that they can just bring back the loan deal, just cancel that completely, and then instead of trying to sign a new player, they've already got essentially one on their books already. So just bring him back across London and slot him in there. But I was under the impression the whole point of the loan deal for Chalobah was to get him game time. So I'm not sure where the thought process is. They've said they're going to give him game time, but I'm not sure on that. I really they've got a couple of sort of kids that are coming up through the system in that same position. So I'm not sure how much game time he's actually going to have.
Well, we haven't seen the books at Chelsea. They maybe looked at their books and thought, that was a better business decision to make other than bringing someone in. Bringing someone in December, in January is always tough. Will they fit in? Will they deliver? What if they get injured? Well, we've got someone just across town. We have the choice to bring him back. It's sad for Palace, of course, but I guess that's part of the downside of getting players on loan. There is always that option. Clubs can decide to recall them. I think it was I can't remember. I think it was Liverpool a couple of seasons ago, or maybe last season, recalled a player from the Scottish League, and I think it was Rangers, and he still never got game time anyway. But then it's the choice of the parent club to make, and Chelsea have made the choice. I'm sure Glasner will find a way for Palace moving forward.
Yeah, you saying that, just remembered that I think Palace brought back one that was on loan at Oxford a couple of weeks ago. So me up on my high horse, Chelsea being cheeky, Palace do exactly the same thing. So I might just rein that one back in a little bit. But on the other side of the pitch, the West Ham injury situation isn't much better. Bowen is not available. Antonio obviously still isn't going to be available for a while. And Fulkrug is also all out injured. Plus, I think there's a few more that have probably been niggling around for a while. And lastly, Somerville with a thigh injury is doubtful, but I think they seem to be going to be making an assessment probably fairly early Saturday morning before the game. After hearing all of those sort of team news there, how do you think the game is going to sort of play out with all those sort of... There's some pretty big names that aren't going to be available from both teams, or at least questionable at the very least.
Well, yeah, you're totally right. However, there's still a number of players that are going to be available as well. Because West Ham will be missing some of these names, those players. Fulkrug is one that they will miss the most because he's after Antonio's accident, and Fulkrug is beginning to settle into that number 9 role. It was fantastic last season with Borussia Dortmund. Did great in the Champions League, and a couple of games I saw him play. The last game against Fulham, West Ham started with Lucas Paqueta playing, the false 9 position. They got a number of goals in that game against Fulham. 3-2 it ended. They lost. They lost Porter's first game was against Aston Villa. They did good in the first half, but then they couldn't hold on to the result. But yeah, there will be interesting names missing in the lineup. But West Ham have got a talented squad still. Mohamed Kudus is a player I love watching. They've got Soler, the Spaniard. They've got Paqueta, of course, Aaron Wan-Bissaka. These are players, Wan-Bissaka is very much known to Palace fans. These are players that, could decide a game and they give their all. But it's a game that's coming at a time where Palace are, gathering some momentum. It's Palace have lost just 1 in the last 10 in the Premier League, although it's been 4 wins in that period. But as I said to Alex the other day, this is a game where Palace, have scores to settle. They lost at home to West Ham at the start of the season. They will be looking at getting one over West Ham. Graham Potter, fantastic manager from his time at Brighton, didn't pan out too good for him at Chelsea. Maybe, Glasner was saying in his presser, maybe he should have been given more time, but that's not something you get a lot these days in football. So, understandably, results weren't going his way at Chelsea. He was fired, but of what he showed at Brighton, we know he's a talented manager. We know he understands the game. He's one that can, cook up a game plan, and and if the players buy into it, you're looking at a very formidable team. Luckily, it's just a couple of weeks into his reign, at West Ham. So maybe, just maybe, they will still be a bit disjointed and not entirely bought into his principles. But as I said, Palace are in a good form of their own. Glasner is also a no slouch. Is also one that can cook up a game plan. Palace have enjoyed playing away from home sometimes this season. I think there's been 3 wins and 3 draws. Palace have gotten away from home this season. So, this is a result that the boys will be backing themselves. They can get. It will be a tricky game to navigate, but I won't be surprised if Palace go on and get a good result, at least get a draw. But a victory will be a fantastic result for Palace.
Yep, pretty much, very much in the same vein. We need to definitely settle a couple of scores now. The reverse fixtures from the beginning of the season start to come around now, and we weren't playing at our best when they came to Selhurst Park. I seem to remember that we started off very tentatively and didn't really get much better, and that was a lot of what we were talking about in the early days of the season. So it's we need to start going somewhere. We're starting to go up into the position where we should be, sort of that 10th to 14th kind of position. So it's starting to go that way. So fairly confident on this weekend. And you also alluded to Graham Potter there, which is a nice segue into our next section. But before that, we're just going to take a quick moment to thank our provider here at Zencaster that allows us to do these podcasts on a daily basis and to talk nonsense about Crystal Palace for half an hour or so. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencaster came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencaster. And we're back with the Daily Palace podcast brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. I am still your host today, Dan Tanner, and I'm still talking to Wale Bakari. So we are now going to go on to our next section, which Wale slightly alluded to a few moments ago. We're talking about Graham Potter's appointment as manager of West Ham. The other, I think it was last week or within the last few days after West Ham sacking Lopetegui. They have brought in ex-Brighton and Chelsea gaffer Graham Potter. And of course, his first league game for West Ham is against Palace, the ex-Brighton manager. Of course it is. So, Wale, what are your kind of thoughts on Graham Potter and the appointment at West Ham? Do you think it's a good fit for him? Do you think good fit for him? Is it a good fit for West Ham? What are your kind of immediate reactions to sort of his appointment, really?
Well, yeah, I just want to say very, very quickly, his first league game was actually the win against Fulham. Because I can forgive you because there was a midweek game. Because it was a midweek game. Yeah, his first game was the FA Cup loss to Villa, and then the first league game was the midweek win against Fulham. But to answer your question, is one of those exciting ones. A lot of football fans quite enjoyed what he did at Brighton. The opportunity at Chelsea came and then he took it, and maybe he took it at the wrong time because of how things panned out. Mm, I'm sure if he had stayed at Brighton, it would have and continued that performance at Brighton where achieving at that time, it would eventually have gotten maybe the Chelsea job or another job. So I'm sure he wouldn't look at the Chelsea stint and think maybe it was a wrong decision. But it's one of those ones that you're pretty excited about. It's kind of football is exciting, is pragmatic sometimes. It finds a way to bring the best out of talented players. Kairo Mitoma was on fire, under him. The likes of although you could argue that all of these players have also gone on to do great under subsequent Brighton managers, Roberto De Zerbi and Ursula was currently there. So it has to. It's something that the way they work at the club. But Potter specifically did great at Brighton. Didn't have the time to settle at Chelsea. There were a couple of talks about him possibly becoming the England manager. That was how highly thought of he was, amongst football fans and the media particularly. But he's gotten this West Ham job. We will have to wait to see how it goes. For West Ham, I was saying, the other time about West Ham, obviously they got tired of the style of football that their team were playing. Under David Moyes, they weren't the worst side. They played in Europe 5 out of 7 seasons, I think. They won the Europa Conference League, got to the semi-final of the Europa League. They had some interesting nights or amazing nights in Europe. So that's something they haven't had in a number of years. But for some reason, they had issues with your performance of David Moyes. His relationship with the fans just wasn't the greatest. Remember, it was a second stint at the club as well. So, and since every time Moyes has left, they've just not been able to get it right. They wanted him out the other time. Things didn't go so great for them. Then they brought him back again. Now they went for Julian Lopetegui, who had to leave Wolves because of the financial situation of the club. But he's just not been able to get things right. We cannot doubt the ability of Julian Lopetegui. Is a great manager, done great at Spain. Is coached the biggest teams in the world, coached Madrid at some point. So we cannot doubt his abilities, but for some reason things just didn't work out. So it's not really a question of ability here. So Porter has the ability. Whether it will work out for him is something only time will tell. But I'm pretty hopeful for him, for his sake, to have a good run at West Ham, considering how things ended at Chelsea. Because it's only a matter of time before it begins to build a name amongst fans saying maybe it was a fluke what happened at Brighton, but he really wants to do well at West Ham, and maybe just maybe they will do well. I don't care, but I don't want to use the word I'm hopeful he does, or I'm hoping he does, but just from the perspective of loving the game and someone who obviously has exciting attacking ideas about the game and the kind of lessons that instill in players. I'm rooting for him, so to speak.
Yeah, very much just sort of the same line. He's a decent enough manager. Don't really have any real gripes against him except for being an ex-Brighton gaffer. Just that out of principle. You're not allowed to. It's that simple. Until he turns up at Palace, then all is forgiven. But he's a decent enough one. I think he's definitely more suited to, say, a mid-table team where he gets a kind of control a little bit of more of what is actually going on a bit more of a day-to-day basis. Because at Chelsea, they have ambitions of winning the title and competing at the very top level. If you don't do that immediately, you're going to be out the door. If they're willing to sack Jose Mourinho 2 or 3 times because he doesn't do it, you have no hope if you're... But it was also, at the time, when he was actually announced as the Chelsea manager. I was thinking this is very much is Chelsea just getting him because he's flavour of the month? Very much he turned Brighton into sort of a real contender in a very, very short amount of time. And I think it was very much Chelsea just wanted to get the next big thing and the next big England manager, sort of English manager, because I think he was one of the better ones at the time. So it's like, oh, we're going to promote this guy up, and it just didn't really work out. But yeah, as I said, decent enough manager. He's sort of fairly progressive in the way he sort of plays the game. He's not stuck in this sort of in one-way style English football of just boot it down the pitch. He will play some exciting football. He'll mix it up a bit. So I'm expecting him to do fairly well at West Ham. Just can you not do it on the weekend? Can you kind of do it afterwards? Can you do it in the next game? Not when we're playing, because we kind of want the win this weekend. Sorry to break spoil the party a little bit. Is what I'm kind of hoping for. Is there anything else I wanted to bring up on that? Not really. So I think that is not a bad place to move on. We'll take a quick ad break to thank the network, and then once we come back, we'll get our score predictions and maybe a couple of key players for both sides that might pose some kind of impact in the game. So we'll be right back after this. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and make us the first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. And we're back with the last part of the Daily Palace podcast. I'm still your host for this last little bit, Dan Tanner, and we are still talking to Wale Bakari. So, last bit, as this is the preview to the weekend, is the score predictions and some key players that might make an impact. Wale, what are your score predictions, and who do you think is going to be making waves in the game?
I don't think it's one of those games where it will be, drab draw or just a one goal game. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple of goals in the game. I'm tempted to say might end up in a 2-2 draw, but maybe Palace might be able to make it. But I think a 2-2 result, that's what I'm looking at for this weekend.
I was tending to agree as well, because we are starting to score now, and somewhat on a regular basis too. We've got Mateta starting to get on form. Sar's starting to get.
We keep conceding as well.
Yeah, the problem is we keep conceding. Yeah, we really, really struggle in keeping a clean sheet. And West Ham, as we've literally just been mentioning, they have a new gaffer. So these guys are going to be out to try and impress. They're trying to get some regular team football. So, yeah, I'm kind of also leaning to a really sort of exciting and entertaining 2-2. I don't see it being a drab game. I don't see Palace doing drab games anymore. Sort of sitting back.
Do you know what? I'll go 2-1 Palace actually.
You want to go 2-1? You're going to change it?
I'll go 2-1 Palace actually.
All right. Yeah, you can change it. You haven't put it in stone yet, so you're all right. So, what are some of the key players that you think are going to make an impact then? 2 or 3 from both sides. So, who do you think the West Ham players are going to make an impact? And then obviously the Palace ones.
Personally, I find Mohamed Kudus, the most exciting in that West Ham team. Of course, with Jared Bowen and Mason. Mohamed Kudus is the one that can, create something out of nothing. It's the one that can, take the game by the scruff of the neck. It has a way of doing that. From his days at Ajax, I remember him at the World Cup against Portugal. Almost seemed like, he had, different business on his mind, even though Ghana were going to lose the game. I think got 2 goals late on in the game and could easily have gotten the equalizer for Ghana or the win. I can't remember what the result was. I remember in the last Nations Cup against Egypt, got a goal out of nothing. Almost got a goal out of nothing against Liverpool the other day. While the game was still quite close at the start. It's just that type of player. So for me, it's the most dangerous of that in that team at the moment. Of course, the obvious names. Lucas Paqueta is another one. He's able to conjure magic, on his day as well. He's got the Brazilian flair, got the intelligence, although his temperament sometimes, gets in the way of his talent, but he's one that is able to, whip up some magic as well. So Kudus, Paqueta, um, depending on who's, well, I realize doubtful. It would be Fabianski in goal because, more often a couple of times these days we're seeing the goalkeeper saves are proving really crucial. Fabianski has a way of having a blinder of a game when he wants to as well. So I think the goalkeeper would be important for West Ham as well, especially with Palace's prowess from set pieces as we've seen in the last couple of weeks, and Jean-Philippe Mateta looking like he's getting back to some form. So those are the 3 players I'll be going for: Paqueta, Kudus, and of course whoever is in goal. Fabianski most likely, for West Ham. For Palace, obviously Eze is well. We all know about Eze's abilities. I was reading some of the thoughts of some of the Palace fans after the win against Leicester, and there were some questions about him dangling too long on the ball, not having enough effect on the game as you would wish to. But I'm there thinking, well, the team's gone away to Leicester and have won. It's not going to have a great game every time. Yes, he didn't have a great start to the season. He began to get back into it, got injured at a time, and it's been a start season for him. But on his day, he can take on anyone. He could easily play, in any side in the Premier League. Maybe not start for maybe the likes of City, Liverpool, but he could easily get into any team in the Premier League, and he's one. Is the obvious choice for the most dangerous player possibly for Palace. Jean-Philippe Mateta, if he's in that beastie mode that we know he can get into, is a handful for any defense. Is running the channels, winning every aerial duel. Is one to look out for. One player that's been playing great of recent, although is doubtful for this game, is the Senegalese Ismaila Sarr. Is creating chances, getting assists. His finishing looks quite good. If he gets a run on goal, he's most likely going to bury it. So we just don't know whether it will be part of the game. Glasner did say earlier that he's doubtful, but if he does play, then that's another player that can. But if he doesn't, then Daniel Munoz is one. His energy on the wing is something that Palace have enjoyed so far. This season, he's gotten a couple of goals for himself as well. He's taken some interesting positions, in the box. He's been able to, it's just been a handful for opposition midfielders and defenders, and that's one that West Ham would have to look out for as well.
I would probably agree with you definitely on the Palace front there. It's the usual suspects when it comes to the Palace one that are going to be the playmakers, and Eze is definitely started to get into himself a little bit more. Instead of being this player that takes on everybody, he's starting to work as a team, sort of work with his sort of teammates. He's starting to play off Mateta. He's starting to play off of whoever's in the central midfield, instead of just trying to take the ball and take on the entire team himself, which I think is a marked improvement from what he was trying to do at the beginning of the season and taking 35-yard screamers just to try, because he can't, so that was the only option that he could think of. But sort of his set piecing, piece taking, especially with Gehi's goal the other day, was a very, very lovely sort of weighted pass. It was absolutely perfect. So when it comes to Palace, it's the usual suspects. Yeah, Eze, Mateta, Gehi, definitely going to have a solid game as always. Now that Chalobah's not there, so he's probably going to have to pick up a little bit of the slack there as any good captain, sort of make sure you're solid at the back, because as we've also mentioned earlier, we have a great habit of struggling to keep a clean sheet. But on the West Ham side, I sort of the opinion that Thomas Soucek will probably be he's just a constant presence in West Ham. He's just the engine that keeps it going. He is going to make that central midfield an absolute war zone and really, really fight for every ball. He's just one of those guys. He can also get a few goals here and there, just sort of that sort of in a set piece. He's just going to get up and use sort of all of that strength to just sort of get a headed goal in, or just even be a real sort of target man in the box. But my slight long shot when it comes to a key player will be Soler, just because he is he's a very technically gifted winger, very intelligent. He also, I think he scored the other day as well, so we might be up for it too. But yeah, he's been around a while. He played PSG, Valencia, so he's played at the top end of the game. He is not a slouch, but he is kind of slightly overlooked when it comes to sort of the Premiership's sort of top wingers. He's not going to always show up, but when he does, he can be a real nuisance. Very talented, very intelligent player. But yeah, and as I was saying earlier, like the game, I'm expecting this to be a entertaining 2-2. You're going 2-1. Well, let's see if Palace can get you a good birthday present and get you a nice win, and hopefully, yeah, Palace and Liverpool, because I know you're a Liverpool fan. Sorry, everybody here, to break the illusion. So let's see if we can't get a couple of good wins for you. And on that note, I think it's a nice place to end it there. Thank you, Wale, for giving us your thoughts today.
Always a pleasure, Paul. Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much. So with that, if you've listened to it, put up with us this far, give us 5 stars on whichever platform you are listening to us on. It helps us get noticed. It helps us get sort of more people to listen to us. So please just keep listening, and just keep listening. And on that note, goodbye.